Hi guys and welcome to the channel. My name is Nick O'Leary. Now today we're covering a Mercedes-AMG model, and in the AMG world it's known as a GLE 53. Let's take a look. Now, doesn't this look stunning? And I know what does it on an AMG. It's that new grille over the past few years called the AMG specific grille. And it just gives that awesome aggressive stance on the road. Not to mention a few other AMG elements on the car as well. Even the exhausts, they look pretty cool on this one as well. But of course, housing in this car is that awesome 3-litre engine. Now, obviously, this being a 53, you can opt for a GLE 63 as well, which will give you a nice 4-litre V8 right before they're all faded out in 2030. But I think this one's quite nice. It's kind of that halfway in between. And of course, we'll show you what it sounds like later. Now, of course, you can get the normal engines in the GLE as well. I won't cover those in this particular video, so I'll leave a link in the banner up above if you're after the petrol, diesel, or even hybrid versions of those. But in this one, we're focusing on the special one, the 53. As with all AMGs, they look stunning from every angle. So from the front, you've got the AMG specific grille, and even to the rear with the exhausts, swooping kind of aggressive styled headlights. And that's the whole point. They're designed to kind of catch and draw people's attention. It's a head turner. Now this of course has the AMG Performance Exhaust, so it does definitely sound good when you turn it on. And it also features AMG ride control with air suspension. So one little handy thing is when you're opening up the boot, and say you need to lift something really heavy into the boot, there is a button on the inside just in here which will actually lower the car down. You can hear now that the air suspension is lowering the back of the car down, so just in case you need to lift something heavy, you don't have to lift it up as far. It lowers it by about 40 millimeters. Now that air suspension obviously does play a more important part than just lowering the boot, which we will cover in a minute on the dynamic select modes. But in a nutshell, it basically stiffens the suspension or softens the suspension based on your preferences. Now all GLE 53s in the UK have the 7-seat option. So you've got the first row, the second row, and then a third row, which is just under the floor here. Now, one thing to note with GLE 53s is that they have electric on the front seats, electric on the second seats for adjustment, and then on the third seat row at the back here, they're just a manual pull-up. But it's still quite easy. Literally just grab your hand on the front there, pull it up and it'll lock into place. And to fold it down, there's a little lever just here. So I'll do the same for this one. Now, for obvious reasons, it's not for full-size adults, but it's definitely a useful option just in case you need to carry anyone in the back. Now, you're probably wondering how you actually get in. Well, that's done on the second seat row. So to get into the very, very back, as I mentioned, there is a button just here at the very, very top. So you quite simply flick this button, and you can do the same for the other side as well. This will then raise the seat completely out of the floor, and then you can obviously get in. Now, to put the seat back where it was, you do need to hold this button, and you'll notice as well when you do hold it, it's going to lock into its kind of almost vertical position. So then you can adjust this seat afterwards so you don't crush the third seat row's legs. You can do this on the door here just by adjusting, moving the seat forwards, backwards, or even adjusting the backrest. Now, I'd imagine most people who own a GLE 53 are probably just going to make use of the 5 seats and then make use of the massive boot. So it's 630 litres with the second seat row up, but these down. So if we put these down, just like that, so 630 litres just like this. Now, if you fold the second seat row down, it goes to 2,055 litres. And I mentioned they're all electric, so there are buttons over here to do just that. If I press that button, they then fold down at the flick of a switch. Now that's a practical boot. Now, the GLE being one of the larger SUVs in the Mercedes-Benz range, there is loads of legroom in here, so definitely no complaints in the GLE. Now, of course, as I mentioned, the second seat row is electric, so you can adjust these seats forwards and backwards on here like this, and the backrest as well, so you move that forwards and backwards. Of course, if you're utilising the third seat row, then you obviously need to check with them and adjust this maybe just a little bit more forward to give yourself a bit more room. But yeah, other bits and bobs here. We've got the climate control on the back, so yes, it's triple zone climate control. People in the back can control their own temperature on these buttons here. There's also 2 USB-C ports down here for charging phones, cargo nets, loads of space in the doors, in the door bins, and of course cup holders in here as normal, and storage. So loads of stuff in the back for the rear passengers. Now, one of the big head turners in new Mercedes-Benz is of course the dual widescreen display. It's not in all of them, but because this is a GLE, so GL meaning Geländewagen in German, which is SUV or off-road vehicle, and then the E part means it's based on the E-Class. So naturally, the E-Class has this double widescreen display, so naturally you're going to see it in the GLE. Now, there are a few tweaks on this because it is an AMG. It's got a few extra added things built in, so I'm going to focus on those things today. But if you want to know more about the MBUX system in general, which I'll briefly cover in this video, but if you want to know more, click on the banner up above. So naturally on the screen here, most people are going to use the first 4 things. So MBUX, just like all the other models, has a phone here, so you can have 2 phones connected at the same time, so maybe a personal phone or work phone or friend and family's phone. Sat-nav, very easy, very clear, has live traffic and map updates built in, all free of charge for the first 3 years. And yeah, super easy to use. It is all touchscreen as well, so you can tap on here and then type in a relevant place of where you'd like to go. So super easy to use. Going back to the home screen, of course I'm using this touchpad here at the moment, but as I said, if you prefer, you can use the actual screen itself, or you can use the touchpads on the steering wheels. They do a very similar thing as well, or you can talk to it. So after that we have then radio, and then of course there's media for playing music off a phone or something like that. However, as this is an AMG, let's have a look at some of the AMG menus. So in here, if I just pop the ignition on, there are loads of things in here, from viewing statistical information from the engine to even going off-road, because it is an SUV after all with 4-wheel drive. So in here, there's loads of things you can view for things like your brake pedal, for example, and your accelerator pedal. You can see how much and how hard you're pressing each of the pedals. You can see your G-force readings for any track driving or anything like that. On top of this as well, you can even see the level of pressure being applied to each suspension strut, or the air suspension in the car. And then for off-roading, you can even see your degree of steering wheel and even your pitch, just in case you're doing any off-road excursions. Now, for the AMG enthusiasts out there, you can see your engine horsepower, your engine torque, engine oil temperature, and even transmission oil temperature as well. Now, you can view most of this over here on this screen as well. So over here, as with quite a few AMGs, you actually have this awesome Super Sport display, which has one dial in the middle and shows you your speed on the left and then revs on the right. And you can customize this. So if I swipe this left or right, I can customize each element to whichever I fancy. So maybe I want to see those horsepowers there, the boost for the turbo, and I don't know, maybe we can view my music playing here, for example. Lots of things you can customize. And say, for example, maybe you wanted some more traditional dials. So if I put those back to normal, you can then press home and go to styles and display, and then customize the theme. So then we've got things like classic, so traditional dials here, and then there's also sport, super sport that we just saw here. And then there's also, on this particular model, an understated mode. So this basically reduces the displays down, so even this screen here in the middle, barely anything on the display, and that's all it shows you. Now, as soon as you do anything on the screen, it will basically go back to normal, but it's quite useful if you just want to focus on the driving. Maybe if you're doing some nighttime driving or something and don't want the lights too bright, but of course you can dim them down over here anyway. So loads of options and customization on that front. Now, I did mention earlier I would cover dynamic select. This is a huge part of an AMG. Obviously, you have all of that power from the engine, so naturally you might want to customize it and kind of tune it to how you'd like. So in the middle here, there is a button called dynamic. And what this does, this adjusts how the car's engine, suspension and gearbox react to the situation on the road. Now, as this is a GLE SUV and an AMG, it's going to have a few extra modes here. So naturally here you'll have sand or trail, so all these things are going to adjust mainly suspension and reduce that power for off-road use. But then you've got things like slippery for wet conditions like it's outside at the moment, or icy, snowy conditions. You have your own custom mode as well. You've got comfort mode, which is going to start up in every day. And then of course the sport modes and sport plus modes, which of course do make the exhaust a little bit louder. So speaking of the exhaust, what's it sound like? Now unfortunately with modern cars, they do have a thing called a soft limiter on the revs. So basically when they're parked up or stationary, they don't rev particularly high, but AMG do have a little trick up their sleeve called Emotion Start. Now what Emotion Start does is basically start the car and rev it slightly higher, but most importantly keep the valves open. Now it's not too loud, but it definitely does show off. So let's do it now. Now this AMG video wouldn't be complete unless I went through the engine and some of its technical data. So going on to some stats, on the GLE 53 it houses a 3-litre 6-cylinder engine which can produce up to around about 435 horsepower, which sounds really impressive considering its size. But it does have a few tricks up its sleeve. So apart from having some usual things found in powerful engines like Camtronic and Nanoslide, Camtronic referring to that the cylinders can basically turn off to save fuel when it's not under load. So that's quite a welcoming feature on such a powerful engine. But one trick up its sleeve is a thing called ISG, Integrated Starter Generator. And this is what you'll see in the brochures and things like that for the GLE. It's basically the thing called EQ Boost. And what EQ Boost does, it has this integrated starter generator to help boost you along, and it adds about 22 horsepower to the engine. Now that doesn't sound like much, but the torque on that little electric generator goes up to 250 newton meters, meaning it practically eliminates any turbo lag, because naturally when you push your foot on the accelerator, the turbo will spool up. But handily in this car, it's actually very, very fast at spooling up anyway. But with this extra kind of electric energy, it basically can give you immediate acceleration, kind of mimicking what you might feel in an electric car. So that's why its 0 to 60 time is actually 5.3 seconds. And quite easy to remember as well, being a GLE 53, 5.3 seconds. So considering its size and of course its practicality, it's a pretty fast car. And as you just heard, it does sound good as well. So definitely one of my favourites. There we go guys, that concludes this week's video on the Mercedes-AMG GLE 53. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section down below, and don't forget, if you yourself have a suggestion for a video, pop it in the comment section down below and I may just consider your suggestion. Don't forget that subscribe button to be notified on when I upload a new video. We'll see you next week.